Okay, I am showing 11 o'clock, so I want to get started. Again, let me introduce myself for anybody who's new on the call. I'm John Arnold. I'm the Chief Inspiration Officer of the 7-Minute Life. Allyson Lewis is the founder, and she cannot be with us today because of some travel. So I am stepping in, and I'm going to be leading us on going through a monthly review. And monthly reviews are very, very critical. I'm going to go over 4 reasons in just a second on why you want to do monthly reviews, or for that matters, any timely review like weekly or annual. And I'll say a word before we get done with today's webinar about how often I do reviews and how those look a little differently. But the focus of today is doing a monthly review. And as I said a moment ago, if you weren't on here just yet, there's a worksheet that you should have a link to from the email. And I'll be looking over that worksheet, walking you through the particulars of it, tell you a few things that aren't on the worksheet that you want to consider. And we'll be looking at 3 of my goals that I've been working on so I can show you how I evaluated them. I like to be as concrete as I possibly can. And I have some really mixed results this month. One last time, I want to tell you to be sure and participate in the chat if you can, if at all possible. And what you want to do is scroll over screen, select chat, and make sure that your chat's going to everyone. So we all ready to get started? Give me a big raised hand or something like that if we are, because I am. Let's just go ahead and dive right into the content. I mentioned that there are 4 benefits, 4 reasons that you want to do a weekly review. Grab my eraser here. If I seem a little discombobulated this morning, it's because at home we are laying carpet, and I had my whole office stripped out yesterday, and I'm standing in almost a bare bones office. So the audio may sound a little different today because I don't have all my books back in here and that kind of thing yet. But here we go. Let's look at these 4 benefits that you want to take advantage of by having a monthly review. And if you think of some others, I would love for you to put them in the chat. Because as I say, I like this to be a conversation and not just a presentation. But the very first one is, and this is really critical, I feel that reviews do what I call prevent drift. They prevent us from drifting. Now, what in the world do I mean by that? It's really easy, if you're not paying attention, to drift in your life away from the goals you set, the intentions you have, because let's face it, we're out there in life, we have this tide of activity going on around us. Unless we are intentionally have set a course and are working purposefully against that tide or with that tide, depending on which the case may be, it's easy for the tide to just cause us to drift off course, and then we don't know where we are. And so every time we do a monthly review, it is a course check. It's a moment to make sure that we're on course. I have gone on several treks with my son in New Mexico at Philmont Scout Ranch. And one of the things they taught us, you always have a map, you always have someone who's the navigator for the day with the map and their compass on hand. And one of the things that we did is every time we took a break or we came to a junction in the trail we were on, we always checked our map to make sure that we were staying on course. And it was incredibly invaluable because it's really easy to get lost when we get off course. And what happens when we get off course and we get lost? We spend and waste time and money trying to get back on course. So preventing drift is to me, one of the biggest primary functions and benefits of having a monthly review. Now, another thing that happens when we have a monthly review is it interrupts, and this is a positive interruption, it interrupts procrastination. And I'm just going to abbreviate that. It interrupts procrastination, right? When we have a monthly review, what happens is things that we are putting off, they're put back in front of our face, and we're reminded that we're behind, or we're delaying those things, or we're avoiding those things. And I find oftentimes it is a monthly review that makes me go, you know what, John? It's time to do something about this. Stop putting it off and get her done. All right. So, dig your heels in, do the work, just get it done. And a lot of times what it means is just simply picking out the first next micro action. What is the next very tiny thing that I need to do to keep moving forward? So you'll see when we look specifically at what goes on in the monthly progress report is on this sheet, how this interrupts procrastination, because one of the things that happens is we have two categories here. We're going to make adjustments, and then we figure out the action steps for next month. And you have a calendar here where you can begin to put critical deadlines and things like that. So it's a great course check, and it's also a great way to get you moving again if you have gotten kind of stuck or behind. So let's look at two more benefits, and then we will jump into how we go about doing a monthly review. Let me grab a quick sip of water. If you have any questions, jump in. Can we have a link to that document? I had said, yeah, hey, give me just a moment, and I will pull that link up. If somebody else wants to do it before I can grab it, that would be great. Actually, let me just pause. We got plenty of time, so no need for me to be in some crazy hurry. Let me go grab that link for you and make sure everybody has this. All right. This is a nasty long link that I'm just pulling from the email, but give that a try. Would somebody click on that and make sure it goes to that? Because I do want everybody to have that. And while you're checking, somebody just, give me a thumbs up. Okay, thanks. It's working. So anybody else needs that worksheet, there's a link there in the chat. Go ahead and click on that because it'll be helpful to have it open in just a moment after we do these two other benefits of having a monthly review. Another one is, and this should be pretty obvious, it improves performance. When you have a monthly review, the way that it improves performance is it gives you pause to look at what's working best, what's not working, and make an improvement, turn the corner, change what you're doing. It's easy oftentimes when we're plugging away and not reflecting on our performance and evaluating our performance to just keep doing what we've always done, whether it's effective or whether it's efficient or not. And those two words, efficient and effective, are going to be critical for our conversation today, because you want to look at both your efficiency and your effectiveness. I'll explain the difference in a moment, but just know that we're going to want to look at that. And so a review can dramatically increase your performance, because when you do this course correction moment, you have the opportunity to recognize unhealthy habits, poor patterns that you've put in place, maybe something contextually that shifted that is making your plan not work. Sometimes we put great plans in place and then they don't work, not because it's not a good plan, but because the situation changes and our plan doesn't fit the situation. Perfect example from this past month, which I'll go into more in depth in just a moment, but perfect example. I had 2 weeks out of last month where I was traveling or I was sick. I traveled for 1 week, I was sick the next week. Well, that's half my month. And that took my plan and pretty much dumped it on its head. Wasn't that I didn't have a good plan, but that plan didn't work with both travel and being sick back to back with one another. So look at that specific example and the impact of it and how I adjust to it in just a moment. So I hope that makes sense. It improves your performance. And last but not least, all of these things I think add up to helping us hit our goals. Now, some of you have probably heard me say this in the past. When I would set my annual goals, and I'll set anywhere between 8 and a dozen annual goals. Some of those are fairly small, quick wins. I almost always have one that's what I call a big, hairy, audacious goal, a bag. So there's a broad range within those goals, but what I found before I started exercising regular reviews of my goals was that I would go into the front end of the year with a whole bunch of energy, and it was not unusual for me to have a feast or famine relationship with my goals. And what I mean by that was I had some goals that I completely rocked and I crushed, and then I had goals that I basically never touched. And as soon as I put in place a review process, that put an end to that feast or famine phenomenon with my goals. What happened was, because I was reviewing every goal on a regular basis, even if I wasn't working on it or not, I was pulling it up and taking it into consideration. Because I was doing that on a regular basis, every goal before the end of the year got attention. I found that the vast majority of my goals I completed. If not, I completed a significant portion. And there were a few goals that I wouldn't complete because somewhere along the way, course of the year, I find almost every year there are 1 or 2 goals or 2 or 3 goals that, as I get clarity, usually around mid-year, I'll say, you know what, that was a great intention at the beginning of the year, but I'm going to rethink it and I'm going to let go of that goal and I'm going to do something different, or I'm just going to let go of it. So reviews help you get over that feast and famine activity around your goals so that they don't get behind. And that's what happens. Most people don't hit a goal because they get behind on it, they become overwhelmed, and they shut down. But if you're regularly taking bites out of your goal because of a review process, you're more likely to not wind up in that space of overwhelm. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions. I am recording, so Laurie, sorry I had not looked at the comments for a moment. Got too busy talking. Yeah, so it is on record right now. Let me pause there. Any questions about any of these? Does this make sense? And or do you want to add anything to this? And I'll just pause and give you a second to, I welcome a couple other people. Karen, Kimberly, good to see you all in here. Not sure who else. Oh, Jean's popped in. I haven't seen Jean for a while. Miss you, Jean. And it's not your fault, Jean. I've been gone. So glad to have you in here. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move into then how we do a monthly review. Like what are the moving parts of that? And I'm going to add something to your sheet that you have that I can't do my review without spending some time on. And when you get ready to do a monthly review, this may sound a little strange, but it's common sense, and I find common sense isn't always quite so common. You want to be very clear about what you're reviewing on a monthly basis. I am specifically reviewing my goals, and it's going to be hard to have a monthly review if you don't have a clear set of goals. So that's a little bit of a prerequisite. You can do a monthly review and just say, hey, how was my month going? Did I have a good month? What was good about it? What wasn't so good? What improvements do I want to make? But you're going to get a lot more out of your monthly review if you have clear goals. And the other thing is that hopefully when you have set your goals, you have set what I have referred to over and over again as hard metrics, and soft metrics. For those who you aren't familiar with those terms, metrics in general are just how we measure a goal. So for example, I have a health and fitness goal right now that involves weight loss. And one of the hard metrics for that weight loss goal is, you know, how much do I weigh? What is my weight? I could do measurements if I want. I'm not doing measurements. I have done that before in the past when I was weightlifting a lot in high school and college. I'd set goals and I'd want to put X amount on my biceps or take X amount off my waist or put X amount on my legs. Those were metrics that I could have as well. The soft metrics, so these are quantitative, I'll put a number by it. The hard metrics are quantitative. The soft metrics are qualitative, meaning, you know, for example, with weight loss, a soft metric can be how good I feel about myself. You know, that when I lose weight and I'm trimmer and I'm lean and I have energy, I feel better about myself and I have more confidence. That's a soft metric. It's just as important, or maybe even more important in some ways to me, but it needs to be there as a metric where I'm paying attention to the impact that the goal is having on me. So you want to be clear, you want to have clear goals that you're following. I set mine every 90 days, and it's really helpful in terms of your monthly evaluation to look at your metrics and say, okay, so how am I doing? Let's look at my performance results. Let's see how I have, what would have been the outcomes, or am I just busy and not getting anywhere? Because we can do that too. You can have a whole lot of activity without achievement. And that's where metrics are good, to make sure that you're not just working hard, but that you're working smart and it's producing results. So that's kind of the backdrop before you get to a monthly progress report page. And then the first thing you'll see on the very first question you want to ask is, what worked well? You know, out of my goals over the past month, what worked well? When did I make good choices? Celebrate that. When did I see substantial progress and why? You want to slow down and you want to kind of list those things out. So let's look at a couple of my goals, and I will unpack these questions through my goals as we're moving along. And at the beginning of the month, let's know it's the beginning of March, some of you may have been on the call when I did a class on 90-day planning. And I set several goals. In fact, I still have this whiteboard right here. I've changed one of them on here because I was on the fence at the time, but just a day or two after I committed. I don't know how well this whiteboard will show up. Might have some glare. I have a little bit glare there, but I think this is going to work out okay for everybody. The blue are my goals that I came up with during the morning of that call. And I had, one was a fitness goal, create a healthy, handsome body. The healthy, handsome is kind of the qualitative aspect of that body by reducing my weight to at least 195 pounds. So that was a goal that I set at March 1st, roughly. I think it was about a week before. I'd have to look back and see where the dates line up. Help at least, and I put that in, I'll explain why I put that over, 2,500 people write a life purpose statement by creating and running a free 5-day purpose challenge by May 15th. And right now, I am on track to do that. I fully plan on doing that, and I can give you all a link to take part in that later in the call. Don't let me forget. It'll take me a moment to pull it up, so I'll wait when I pause and ask if there are questions to go find that link and share it with you all. But that was another goal that I have, and this is the goal that I have changed since then. I still have the goal that was here. I had a goal here about helping 60 people, having 60 people enrolled in a class on purpose by the end of May. I think the date I had was May 25th when I originally did this. I have instead changed that date a little bit because I needed a little bit more time. I want to say now it's, let me look, May 29th is when I'll end up opening registration. So the actual accomplishment of that goal will be sometime late May, early June. So these were 3 goals that I have, a couple that are kind of business goals for me, and one that was a health goal. Now, I mentioned here, at least, I'm just going to throw this in a sidebar. Whenever I'm setting goals, I try not to, I think somebody used the words limit the blessing, you know, and I think that's awesome. And that is, rather than set 2,500, I usually set minimums for goals. You'll notice here I have at least 195, at least 2,500, because you know what? If I could get 3,000 or 5,000, I would love that. And when we don't do something like this, at least what happens is we create a finish line in our heads, and it's easy to slow down as we approach that finish line. Now, if I get 2,500, I'm totally cool with that. I'm excited about that. I'm not going to be disappointed. But I know that mentally, if I add the words at least 2,500 or over 2,500 people, then mentally I'm thinking into a possibility larger than that, and I'm open to that. So I find that helpful. Looks like some people are commenting. Let me check real quick. So with a monthly planning document that you provide in the link, this appears to be an aftermath log of your goals and deadlines. That's exactly right, Lamina. When we look at the calendar, the goals and deadlines for next month, this is where I think most struggle is getting to that point. Will there be available logs for these areas as well? Look at the calendar, the goals and deadlines for next month. I need a little bit more unpacking of that. I'm not sure I'm 100% tracking. Let me read the next comment though. It's best practice in all avenues in life to never set a goal that you may or cannot achieve. Never set yourself up to fail. Yeah, absolutely, Lamina. You always want to make sure that your goal is realistic. I'm having a little trouble with your question. I'm unclear on what you're asking regarding the, okay, thank you. You're going to rephrase. I'll give you a moment to do that. All right, so here were the goals that I have, and let's talk about my review a little bit. What I did was I looked at what worked well, and I had some intentions on how I was going to do this. This is what I wanted to achieve. These orange things, for those of you who were on that call about 6 weeks ago, these were some methodologies that I wanted to put in place, some habits. So for example, with working toward this healthy body weight, I realized that one of the hangups for me was, or one of the places my whole plan could fall apart, is if I didn't make healthy food available. And so I decided that every week when I go shopping for family night supper that I go to on Wednesday nights, that I would buy lunch salads that were prepared and put them in my refrigerator so that I had 3 lunch salads, because I wanted to at least 3 times a week have salad. And I also would get some prepared green smoothies if something was going to interrupt me. So for what I mean by that is I homemade make some green smoothies, and I freeze and prep those ahead of time and put them in the refrigerator. If I'm going to need to be on the road or something like that where I'm not going to be able to blend that, I like to buy a green smoothie that's already been made and have it available, take it with me. So this worked really, really well to a point. And there was a breakdown point, and the breakdown point was when I traveled and when I got sick, and those things happened back to back, my routine got horribly hit. When I traveled, I was staying in a retreat center that was kind of a bed and breakfast. I was in a farmhouse where we went and we ate family style in the evenings together. and I had almost no control over the selection of what I was going to have. I mean, they would have a main course and several sides, but it's not like I was sitting down in a restaurant where I could go, oh, this is what I want. I also found that when I travel, I get too much of a sense of urgency and feel I've got to, just bust on down the road and can't stop. And I find myself eating fast food when I'm actually on the road. And I had some significant drive time. I had a 9-hour drive one way to get to this retreat and then 9 hours back. And then when I was sick, that completely messed up my appetite. Nothing tasted right. I also wasn't shopping and getting out. So, I wound up depleting some of what was in my house. And so anyways, that stuff really messed up my schedule. So that was one of my goals. And as I sat down, what I found was that this fail-safe that I had in mind of shopping ahead of time really, really, really worked well. And I'm going to continue to do that. Now I've decided after my monthly review, I was like, okay, do I need to have, like a backup plan for, so I don't go through what I did with traveling and being sick? And I thought through a bunch of options, and I finally was like, you know what, that was a fluke. That's crazy. I'm not going to worry about it. It got me off my A game. I lost some of my results. I'm back on my game now. No worries. Don't bother with an adjustment around that. The one adjustment I did make is I found that while I wanted to have a 1-hour intensive of working out at least 3 times a week, so those of you cue in a lot, I'm a big yoga fan, and I wanted three hours in the studio or an intensive practice at home. I ended up not doing that, and I think I am going to make an adjustment there. And my adjustment, what I'll do is, it's almost always about convenience when we fail to do something like that. I'm going to pick out several DVDs that fit the ticket for what I want there, and I'm going to set them out in my guest room where I do yoga for home practice, so that there's nothing to even think about. Because I didn't go into that with a plan for what those 1-hour intensive would look like. And I can do my own routine. I've done yoga long enough that I can create a sequence that would fit the ticket, but I found that, I just didn't do it. So I'm gonna make it easy and let somebody else do the work of thinking through that and go like, hey, I didn't make the studio. This is the DVD I'm doing. So you kind of see what I'm doing there with this stuff. You process through, and I start to list what worked best. And I had up here at the very top, and I don't think you can read that, purchasing salads to keep handy weekly. That was one of the things that worked really, really well. Now, what to me is lacking on this sheet is not just what worked well, but adjustments. But I like to slow down and say, okay, so what were the problems? So I take on the back and I write a list of problems and the result of that. So like this says, one of the problems I had was 2 weeks of my month were dominated by travel and being sick. Broke my route, and I put it as a result, it broke my routines and I lost gains, but I am regaining those. Then I have a note, thought through adjustments, but this is a fluke. Just note that when I'm traveling, I really shouldn't be in such a hurry. I need to stop and eat rather than going through a drive-through and getting something from a bag that's easy to eat, because it'll be an unhealthy choice. So I put, don't resort to pure convenience. And now I'll look at a couple of these in just a moment. Let me take a look and see if anybody else has a question, or stop me if you do. Feel free to interject and ask any questions you have. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about these because they're a completely different goal, and maybe it'll resonate more closely with something that you're working on in terms of doing this process. Not that you guys are out there necessarily doing this, but these are kind of business goals that have other types of tangibles. Okay, I'm going to look at the bottom one here. I'm going to skip over this because I haven't launched that yet. That's a goal for within this quarter, 90-day goal in this quarter. And there is some preparatory work that I have been doing, but most of that preparatory work has to do with this last goal I have down here, which is re-engage. This is my personal blog, The Practical Disciple, which I want to develop into a core business for me. But I want to re-engage my Practical Disciple community by running a 90-day pre-launch campaign. This is a program that somebody offered for free, an online marketer that I follow, fantastic woman, Amy Porterfield, and she had a freebie one week that was an outline for what to do for 90 days to re-engage with your clients or your audience. And specifically what that looks like, but i.e. weekly, I will be sending to my list, my email list, my community. I will email, post, do a Facebook Live, and have a freebie every week like clockwork, and those things will all be integrated and supportive of one another. So that's something I set out to do 6 weeks ago. I analyzed the last month's performance on that. I did have clear metrics on this. I have a spreadsheet where I track how many people are on my email list, and am I picking people up on my email list. This was not necessarily intended strongly as an email list build, if you will, as re-engagement, reconnecting with my audience. So what I'm finding is while I am seeing some gains there, in terms of there are people, I've probably had 70 subscribers or so jump on board during that time. I actually lost a lot of subscribers, and that wasn't a bad thing. That was one of the observations I made, because I want to clean that list up and have an engaged audience. And if what I'm sending to somebody is not what they want, I would much rather they just go ahead and opt out, and I'm not wasting their time and they're not wasting mine, you know? So I had not done much with my community for quite a while, and it surprised me when initially I tried to re-engage folks. All of a sudden I had all these people that were jumping off my list. I say all these people, it was probably 30 folks or something, you know? And anyways, it was an unintended consequence, if you will. And then again, it was not, because what I wanted to do was clean up my relationship with my community, re-engage with the people who really wanted to be engaged. So that was okay. And I put in place a routine where I'm weekly now, creating a blog post with a related freebie and do a Facebook Live. I track how many people come to my website. I track my email list, my Facebook community, and what else do I? Oh, I track other things like YouTube, how many people are subscribing to my YouTube channel. Not that that was a goal in this, but sometimes we set goals and they have a ripple effect where they affect other things. And if I have those unintended consequences, both good or bad, I kind of like to be aware of them, because it may signal an opportunity or a problem out there. So anyways, that was my goal. I had some pretty clear metrics. I have a spreadsheet in Google Documents where weekly I've been looking at those, and at the end of the month I looked at the trends. And to hold myself accountable, I happen to be in a private Facebook group with some folks who follow this particular marketer, and I have been writing little reports in there of, hey guys, you know, like this morning I jumped on and said, hey guys, here's where I am. I'm about halfway through the 90 days. I've seen incremental increase and a consistent incremental increase in my email list. I've cleaned it up some, but the big thing, I wanted to re-engage. The big important thing is that the people visiting my blog, they are spending more time on the site, and I'm having more return visitors, so they are, beyond a shadow of a doubt, re-engaged. And more people are opening the email that I send out than before. I have very respectable open rates for my email, and that's growing. So I can look at this and say, hey, this is working. Now, what about adjustments? at that, I looked at and I was like, you know, some really good things are working. I put down under what worked best. I said, it's helpful that I had a pre-launch schedule that I could follow, that I had this concrete model from somebody, and that I had templates. One thing that I did was every week I have something free I give away, and I created a template for what that download page would look like and what the delivery page would look like, so that all I have to do is change a little bit of graphics and text, but I'm not building those pages week after week after week and starting like a new wheel every week. So I recognized that it took me about 3 or 4 weeks, but I've gotten in a groove now, and by the 5th time I did it, I was done with everything a day early, and I was done with it a lot quicker. So now, what's the adjustment? Okay, it's working great, right? Maybe thinking, listen, you know, you got everything done on Tuesday that you needed for Wednesday and Thursday. You did it faster, probably 3 times faster than the first time you did it because you have templates in place. I could say, hooray, I'm done, fantastic. But you know what? I can do better. And so the adjustment that I'm going to make is this. Now that I found a rhythm and I have everything done early, now I can start working ahead, and I can get well ahead of the game. The emails, I was sending out the emails that went out on Wednesdays and Thursdays live. Well, now I'm going to pre-write those and schedule them. And I think what I'll do, well, my goal for next month is that I said, now work ahead. Blitz 3 posts and schedule all the emails ahead of time. So I'm going to sit down for a block one day, it may take me 2 days, and I'm going to not just work on what's needed for that week, but I'm going to look out to the end of next month, and I'm going to see if I can't blitz my time for a day or two where I immerse myself in creating those blog posts and those emails and those freebies, and get them all done and schedule them so that all I'm doing is monitoring them next month. And that will be fantastic because, well, it won't be next month, it's this month. This was at the end of April I did that. Here in May, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to blitz ahead, and I'm going to do that the end of this week. And that means when I get into this launch, I won't have to be doing any of this work. I won't be trying to do 2 things at once. I will have gotten ahead so that I can see in clearly one task that I need to be working on instead of multitasking between 2 significant projects. I did notice something that I failed to do in the 90-day plan. And this is, again, where a monthly review is really important. One of the things that I was supposed to do as part of my 90-day plan is to survey my audience at least 3 times. Well, I don't want to wait until the last month. I think the intention there is probably that about once a month you survey your audience so that you can get feedback from them. That's a great way to engage with your audience. And I found as I get feedback, I make my content more relevant, and then again, they're more engaged. So that was one adjustment I need to make. I put down that I need to survey, and I set a date for when I'm going to do that. So you can begin to see how this is really helping me get ahead of the game for next month, and I'm not going to find myself, because I'm now not just looking on the last month, but I'm looking ahead to the next month out of what I've learned, and I'm realizing, hey, I could run into a crunch point here where I'm going to need to continue to do this 90-day pre-launch by and large, but I'm going to have another big project going on at the same time, and I've got to see how I'm going to manage my time between those. And one of the things that I put down is that I want to take and have a planning block where I decide how I adapt this this post schedule while I'm in the middle of, because I don't want to do both of those at once per se. I'm going to adapt this a little bit so that this supports this goal. One goal supports the other goal. And I went ahead and I scheduled that for this Friday. So Friday, I'm going to take out about 2 hours and I'm going to map this out in a lot more detail. I have the broad, more than the broad brush strokes, but I'm going to really nail it down and try to find any holes or loose ends in that schedule. And then I'm going to see how this can support it, or I can adjust accordingly. So let me pause there and let's see if we have some questions. And maybe, Lamina, maybe that's what you were getting at, is looking ahead to the next month some. I'm not sure on your question still, but if this helped with the question you had, let me know. If not, I'll say more. And then we'll talk about action steps in just a moment. But I'll pause here and see what. Okay, great. Glad your question was. I had a feeling it was. And oh, here's something that while I'm waiting for questions, here's something that I want. I'm going to set this down and I want to go back. I mentioned there were 2 lenses I try to look to, and I've kind of mentioned them already, but basically efficiency and effectiveness. I had a really big insight a couple months ago. We were doing a mastermind class. My sister, who is an educator, and she works in administration with education in Rolla, Missouri, she had an event, and she was in charge of a speaker event where they brought in a collection of speakers. And I said, do you do any kind of evaluation afterwards? And she said, oh yeah, we get together and we sit down and we, ask how did people like the speakers this year? Is there anybody we want to have back? Did the speakers have any concerns or needs or complaints? Were there things we need to adjust with the speakers? And they evaluated the event. What I would say is what they were evaluating was the outcome, okay? They were evaluating how that event or activity went. And I'm going to loosely say this was an evaluation primarily about effectiveness. Did we pull off a good event? But she had a really big aha and epiphany in that conversation, because I started asking her some questions about evaluation that they don't normally do. And what I was asking her was, how did the process go? Like, you do these events time and time again. Next time you have one, how can you do it better, setting up the event, communicating with the speakers? So we got into things like, you know what, I bet you get bombarded with questions from the speakers that are all the same questions. What if you created a frequently asked question sheet, and when you initially recruit a speaker, you go ahead and send that with him, and you also give it to your assistant in case, people don't read a lot of times, which send them. In case somebody calls, your assistant can answer that and or direct them to that frequently asked question. Put it on your website, email to them, but put it on your website as well somewhere for them, so that you're not doing this thing where somebody calls and asks a question that you've answered 1,000 times before, and your assistant has to get hold of you, and then you call them back and all that rot. But you might be able to cut some of those things off at the pass because they're coming and you know what they are. That was just one example of, like, what could you do to do this better next time in terms of the process of how you did it. She had been evaluating the outcome, but she wasn't taking time to evaluate the process of how she got there. And that really is a question, not so much of effectiveness. I mean, these things are intimately intertwined. You can't hard, fast separate them. But this, to me, is more a little bit about efficiency. It's about how well you get your work done, how well you get your work done. And if you were looking at, my goals here, if you were listening closely, I was evaluating both those things. I looked at my metrics to see how well I was doing in terms of the outcome and evaluating my performance in that way. And then I was also though saying, well, yeah, but what led to that performance? What distracted from that performance? And or how can I do this even better? Even if I'm really happy with my results, is there a way I can ramp that up? For example, on this down here, I feel great about that fact that I have a system in place, this bottom goal of every week emailing, posting, da 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 da. But wow, what if I could get ahead of the game by having a blitz session of doing several of those posts at once, so that I'm not in and out and in and out of that. In other words, another word for that would be, now that I have a system, can I batch process? Meaning, can I do a whole bunch of a particular process at once rather than coming in and out of that process? So that's just one way to step up your game around processing, would be to move into batch processing so that you do less multitasking. Because research is starting to show that multitasking really, really is terribly inefficient and typically doesn't yield really good results. So I feel like I'm talking too much. So let's see if what else we got here. Jill said, I haven't seen any text since 10:13. You know what, Jill? I think part of that is several people did ask questions or make comments, but I'm realizing that they didn't know what they were going to all panelists. So I think most of the people who've been commenting since 10:13, it was going to me, but it wasn't going to everybody. So not that I'm trying to call somebody out, but Jean and Lamina and Karen, a couple of you, your comments are going to panelists instead of everyone. So if you can switch that by pressing that blue bubble, that's really helpful. It's also helpful because some people are visual, and even though I may read or comment on your question, a lot of people need to actually see it to be able to track the conversation. I'm that way. I have to be reading those questions. Even if somebody's saying them, I kind of have to be looking at them. So Lamina, thank you for recognizing your going to all panelists. Maybe you could shift that. That would be great if you have any more questions or comments. So we've got about 10 minutes to 12. I'm going to pause and see what kind of questions you have. Or maybe you have a goal you're working on or something where you struggle with evaluation. I will say this, if you're going to have a weekly evaluation, if you're going to have a monthly evaluation, you kind of have to set a date for that and schedule it, or I find it doesn't happen. Particularly for me, I need to do like the monthly evaluation, not on the 1st, but I need to do my monthly evaluation sometime in the week prior. Usually kind of what I want to do is I do a quarterly goal setting, and I start on that about a week prior to the next quarter. So that takes care of my first month, if you will, because I'm looking ahead for 3 months. And then I have weekly reviews, and my monthly reviews are pretty anticlimactic. I usually just do them on a Monday prior to the next, like the last Monday prior to the next month, because I do weekly reviews every Monday. And it's just a matter of not having another review, but the last weekly review I do of the month, I'm really looking at the last month and looking at the next month. Does that make sense? I'm just, it's not like I'm layering another thing on there. I have a weekly process of review. So every Monday I review, and the last Monday of the month, I'm not going to only be looking at a week, I'm going to be looking at a whole month. And then the same thing happens the last Monday of a quarter. I'm not going to only be looking at, the week, I'm going to be looking at the last 90 days and the upcoming 90 days. So let me kind of map that out. I think verbally that's making sense, or hopefully it is for people. So let's pretend we've got, I'll put up here 3 months. All right. And you don't have to do it the way I do it, but this is what works for me. So this is 90 days. And let's say we've got, this is the first week of the month, and then second, third, and then fourth. And then second, third, fourth, second, third, fourth. I'm going to ignore the fact that some weeks have a fifth Monday or whatever. I just want you to get the principle here. So on this first Monday of a quarter, okay, so this overall is a 90-day period, okay. This first time here, I'm going to be looking at the last quarter and the upcoming quarter. So I'm reviewing the last quarter, and I'm looking at usually my annual goals too. I'm reviewing the quarter, I'm looking ahead for the next quarter. Then I have a weekly review, and the Monday prior to a new month coming up, it will be a weekly review, but I'm also going to look at the month. Okay? So then we have weekly review. Gosh, my tick marks are not very good. And now I'm going to look at weekly, monthly. And weekly. And now I'm at the start of a new quarter. So quarter. Does that make sense? Let me get a little response to that. That looks like something out of like a math class. So, my timeline. I need to write some complex formula. Yeah, I try to keep it simple. And, because if you start thinking of, oh my gosh, I've got to have a weekly review and I need an annual review and a monthly review, and when am I going to do that? The truth is, I just do a weekly review, but the focus of the weekly review shifts on a monthly and a quarterly basis. And that way I stay true to it. If I don't do it this way, I miss things. And then what happens is, and I learned this the hard way, I went into this year, I don't know how many of you know this, some of you do from a prior call. I went into this year because of some context changes. My mom came and spent a month with me. I lost a salary that I had. I had 2 or 3 like really major things happen in January, and I knew they were coming in December, and it dismantled my normal annual goal setting process. And so I went through the whole first quarter basically doing none of this because I had no goals down in front of me, and I hadn't done that in years. And honestly, like, I wouldn't say it was a disaster. It wasn't, in that everything in life was kind of suspended through most of the month of January as I adjusted to being a caretaker for my mom while she was here. And I was getting ready for the fact that at the end of January, I was going to be losing one salary, and I needed to work on replacing that income in some other way. So, I mean, it was kind of okay that it went that way, but it was really not okay in that when I didn't have this in place, it was very hard for me to make any progress. What happens is when you have this, you can advance in life. When you don't have this, you just find yourself trying to survive the status quo. At least that's what happens for me. If I have this, I can have, to be harsh, a battle plan for life for taking new ground. But if I don't have this in place, what I realized in January and really the first quarter, what I realized is that if I don't have this, I get in just I'll call it survival mode, where you're just trying to get through the darn day and not miss anything. And I think, unfortunately, that's where most people are living. Okay, good. I'm seeing some comments here. Got about 5 minutes of the hour, and then I'll just purely go on. I find without a goal plan, I'm just drifting. Absolutely. And here's the problem with just drifting, Karen. If we don't have a goal plan, or at least we know our values really solidly, so that we're at least working on living within our highest values, even if we don't have specific goals, we're trying to not live reactively. If we don't have that in place, what happens is we will live reactively, meaning we're just responding to everything that comes through our door. And we end up a lot of times suspending what's important to us. And I call it living in deferred joy. We get in a mode of, well, you know, once we get past remodeling the house, well, then I'll have time to do such and such. Well, we get done remodeling the house and something else pops up in between, and we defer our joy. We defer living in that, into something new, because we don't have a goal with a deadline around it. Deadline being really core. And the other thing is we oftentimes, particularly if you're a people pleaser, and I'm going to raise my hand way outside of the screen because I can be a big people pleaser. I'm realizing that about myself even more strongly than I thought. So anyways, raising my hand because I'm a people pleaser. If you're a people pleaser, oftentimes what happens is you start living to fulfill everyone else's expectations, or at least a lot of other expectations than the expectations you have. And that can lead to resentment if it's at the cost of things that are important to you. And that resentment can turn into overwhelm. It can turn into depression. It can shut you down if you live in it long enough. So having goals, reviewing those regularly, to me is critical to just being mentally, emotionally healthy. All right, while I'm waiting for a couple calls, we got 3 minutes of the hour, and I always stick around for a good 30 minutes for any kind of questions you have or whatever we need to do. I'm going to give you a link. I got to go find it real quickly, to the purpose challenge that I'm going to be doing, and I'll say a word about that. And it's pretty on point with the conversation we were just having about, you know, whether you have goals or not, whether you're drifting. This purpose challenge that I'm going to do, I think, can really be an insurance policy against drifting. But let me go get that link real quickly for you. Gotta see where I put it. I should have grabbed that before the call. I'm sorry I didn't do that. And I'm doing this not through the 7-Minute Life. I'm actually doing this through the Practical Disciple. So if the link looks weird, that's why. If it doesn't look like something we normally do. And Allyson's she's like pretty stoked about this and totally on board with it. Okay, I think I've got it right here. And I heard a little bleep, so I think I got a message from one of you guys. Okay. There we go. Sorry, that was a little slow. Should have gotten it ahead of time. That's opt-in for 5. If somebody open that, make sure that it pops open. That would be great. Here's what's going to happen with that 5-day purpose challenge, and where I think it will be helpful for many of you, particularly if you're interested in not being in a lifestyle of drifting, but you want to live purposefully, no pun intended. Actually, that's quite a literal comment. What's going to happen is I will have in May 15th is my target right now. And I'm really going to try to stay true to that. But what's going to happen is every day for 5 days, I am going to send out an email and post a blog post and do a Facebook Live, like I was kind of talking about there in my re-engagement goal. But that's going to be every day for 5 days, and it's going to be specifically around understanding your purpose. And some of you have sat in on me leading a purpose session, and I've done a webinar on purpose. You may not have an hour and a half to sit down and carve out and take time to do that. Instead, okay, sorry, I had somebody interrupt guys real quick. No big deal, but what we're going to do instead is we'll do 5 days. And those of you who've sat in on a purpose workshop with me, your purpose is made up of 3 primary components. And I have R's for each of this. This I call your recipient. This is really about what you're passionate about. Is there a person or a cause or something that stirs your heart that you have deep concern about? There's the recipient of the service you do. Purpose is all about service and about loving and caring for people. There is the role that you can play, and your role has to do with your gifts, special skills you have, special knowledge you have, or even, I'll say, special opportunities you have. You may have access to tools or an audience where you can play a role, a critical role for making a difference. And lastly, that's what this last piece is over here, a result. You know, we want to make a difference with our gifts. We have things we're passionate about. We have things we can do to, in effect, a result in that. So who can we serve? How can we serve them? And what's the difference that it could make? So that's really what that coming at a purpose statement is all about. And when you can overlap these 3 things, you're in what I call the sweet spot of purpose. And so over a 5-day period, I'm going to help people find this sweet spot of purpose. Each day, we'll do a different exercise. For the first 3 days, we'll focus on a different circle. It'll be maybe a 10 or 15-minute exercise. Some of you will get it done in 5 minutes. But what we'll do is we'll take just a few moments to reflect on each of these areas and take a tiny micro action step around it. So there'll be a reflection, there'll be an action to take each day for 3 days. On the 4th day, you'll actually create a purpose statement. And you'll be able to hold in your hand a statement that says, this is who I am. This is what I was made for. This is the difference I want to make, and this is how I'm going to do it. And then on the 5th day, that's kind of the so now what day, okay? Now that I know my purpose, okay, where do I go from here? And I'll talk about what you do, what's kind of a workflow, that's not the best word for it, but what's a trajectory that we can take to fire up that purpose? How do we fire up your purpose once you know what it is? And on that 5th day, I'll kind of lay down a broad brushstroke course of direction that you can take to really start living that out. So I'm pretty pumped about this. This is something I've been working on for, oh my gosh, I don't know how long. It's taken on a lot of different faces. Originally, I was going to do it as an annual goal setting process. That didn't feel right after a lot of prayer and reflection. Something popped for me, and I realized that I really needed to hone in on helping people with their purpose. So if you have any active interest in being a part of that, it will be through my blog, The Practical Disciple, which is a site that I lead to help people who are hungering to spiritually grow. And while this isn't so much a big focus on that, my audience over there is hungry to understand what their God-given purpose is. And I know that that topic flows out to a much bigger audience than just my folks who come to The Practical Disciple. So I would love for you to be a part of that if you want to. I was able to connect, not chat. It worked. Okay, great. Somebody said that link works. Thank you so much, Samantha, for letting us know that. And Jill said I was able to connect, but not the chats. So I'm not sure, not 100% sure what that comment made. Okay, we've got about 25 minutes. What are you all struggling with? What questions do you have out of what we did here? And I'm wide open to just answering any time management questions that you have. It can be about goals. It can be about morning planning. It can be about the planner. You know, please feel free to jump in and ask whatever those are. Carol, thank you for being in here. I'm really appreciative of everybody being on the call this morning. Oh, I will go back to, actually I'm going to say something about the monthly plan, because I really didn't say much about the action steps, though I talked about some. Now, once I decided adjustments, like for example, that I wanted to work ahead, okay, that's an adjustment that I'm going to make, but is working ahead an action step? When I say I want to work ahead, is that an action step? And I would love to hear your response of why you do think or don't think that's an action step. I'm going to work ahead next month. Is that an action step? Why do you think it is or isn't? And then it's kind of like a pop quiz. I'll have a drink of water while I wait for some. Lamina says that is not, and Lamina, I hope I'm saying you're pronouncing your name right, and if I'm not, spelled in there phonetically for me, so I will. That is not an action step because there's no specification to the task. I think you need to define what you will do to accomplish working ahead. You are saying it perfectly. There you go. Okay, awesome. You guys are right on the money with it. So while I had up here in my I want to work ahead, I did three things. I did a couple things. Here's what I did. I had two things that are, well, here, let me just put down what I had and I'll talk about it. Under adjustments, I put now work ahead, and then I put a dash. I put blitz 3 posts, schedule emails ahead. And okay, let me say a word about this. This was under adjustments, and this still, it's bordering on a task, but I'm going to take it even further. Blitz 3 post is really a miniature goal, right? That's something I would like to do. The task for that would be I need to brainstorm 3 topics and select 3. I need to draft the post. I need to find a graphic for the blog post. I need to edit the blog post. So there's a series of action steps. This is really kind of a mini project, right? And then schedule emails ahead. Oops, I meant to put this little check mark area up here. Schedule emails ahead is a strategy. It's kind of a goal, but to me, this is a, it's a strategy that I've come up with that instead of doing in email terminology, you have what are called broadcasts, or you can have a scheduled broadcast. And I want to shift to a scheduled broadcast. That's a new strategy. What I need, though, is if I'm going to do that, how I'm going to go about doing that is a whole nother issue. And what I actually did was, this all involves working ahead of time. What I put as action step for next month, and I'll have to explain this because I really haven't shared this strategy with you. It's kind of one of those little hidden Johnisms. So you ready for this is a time management ninja hack I really haven't shared with people. And I'm going to put it in quotes and then I'll explain it. Jump block do a jump block every morning. And when I say every morning, I mean every work morning. So 5 days a week, I'm going to do a jump block. And here's what a jump block is. I will have something like this that is work ahead that I want to do. I will map out some things that I want to get done in advance. And what a jump block is I work using a Pomodoro technique where I set a timer for 20 or 25 minutes and then I take a 5-minute break. Well, a jump block is where I take a Pomodoro cycle. I take one of those Pomodoro units, 25 minutes, and I decide that during that 25 minutes, I will only work on things that are 4 to 6 weeks in advance. So I will only work on things 4 to 6 weeks in advance. I'm going to fudge with that some on this task. This is kind of, when we'll call it a jump, we'll call it a skip, right? Because we're not 4 to 6 weeks out. But I'm going to sit down, and every day I'm going to take 25 minutes to write on posts that are for future dates and write on emails for future dates. So this becomes something that I can actually put on my calendar and that I can check off as done. Now the content of what that jump block will be based off of the action steps of this. So when it comes tomorrow morning, what I'll do is, for example, I would sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do a jump block, and I'm going to do it, and I want to do this first thing. Let me put that in here. I don't know that I wrote that down, but it was my intention. It'll be the first block. Whenever I do jump blocks, I do them as the first block of the day. I just found otherwise I procrastinate them and I never do jump blocks. So tomorrow morning, what will happen is that first jump block that I do will be picking out my 3 topics. Now, if I get done with that, I can move into something else. It's probably going to take me 25 minutes to do that. If I want to do more than one jump block, that's awesome. But I'm going to do at least, and I didn't put these words in there, some of these things I imply in my mind, but I don't always, I know in my head my intention, but I don't always write it out. Do at least a jump block every morning for 5 days a week, first thing. So that gets into being very, very specific. So there you go. Okay, you guys are getting the concept here. Let me see, there were a couple other action steps, and you might see where yeah, here's some other action steps that I had written down. And they're maybe border more on being again, a strategy rather than an action step. There's a fine line between them. Another one I had was create a detailed map of emails needed for the 5-day purpose challenge. So right now I know the broad brushstrokes of that. One of the things that I need to do over this next month is before I even go to write those, I want to have a very clear map of exactly what will be in each one of those emails. I mentioned I need to make a decision on how to adapt the 90-day pre-launch while I'm in the middle of the purpose challenge. So that's a decision I need to make. And sometimes decisions, that's what I'm learning is I have to oftentimes put down as a task decisions I need to make. I'm really bad about waffling on decisions way, way, way too long. It's not so much perfectionism. I think it's just that I'm so right brain dominant and creative that I hate making those choices. I just keep thinking of more and more things that I could do. And I listened to something by a time management productivity guru that I really like, a guy named Evan Pagan, the other day. And he was talking about, he called them 49%, 51% decisions. And what he meant was, he said, sometimes we're waffling between making a choice on a decision that needs to be made, and the difference between them is marginal and may not even really be apparent, and we're probably costing ourselves a lot more in delaying than whatever we're going to gain by picking the perfect choice. He gave an example, I want to say, it had something to do about email in their business. I think they were trying to decide whether they needed to build something in-house or whether they needed to go with a third party and outsource it. And they spent literally months studying and trying to make a decision. And he said, in the end, the difference between those two options was so marginal, we would have been better to just like flip a coin months earlier, pick one and move with it, because we lost so much in productivity in the delay around making that decision that it wasn't even funny. And I saw this again in one of the private Facebook groups I'm on, and a course that I'm listening to on creating courses. And I saw this phenomenon again where somebody wrote in and they were struggling with, which mail service provider should I use? Should I use this one or that one or this one or that one? And finally, the guy, the guru in the private Facebook group said, all three of those are good choices. It doesn't matter. Just pick one of them. They've got pros and cons to each one of them, but all three are good. Just pick one and start going, because you're going to lose weeks just trying to figure this out, or days. So I'm finding that a lot of times for me, something that needs to be placed down as a task is making decisions, because I can get I call it analysis paralysis. Anybody else here struggle with analysis paralysis? Where you could just study something to death instead of making a decision. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I've got 12:17. Yeah, that's the other thing. Lori just mentioned, yes, can't make a decision and it wears me out. An unresolved decision, and I guess this is what I'm learning, is an unresolved decision is an unfinished task. And every unfinished task is what we call an open loop. And those open loops silently drain us. The reverse is true too. When we get overwhelmed, it can become difficult to make decisions. So not making a choice can wear you out, but also being worn out can make it difficult to make a choice. And it's really important in either one of those situations to go ahead and make the choice. Karen, glad you were here. We'll see you hopefully next week. Karen just said, it went to all panelists, but I'll tell everyone, gotta run, guys. Thanks, John. Thank you, Karen. Good having you here. Nelda, I have trouble making a choice on which goals to work on. Yeah, and here's I'll give you do you want a little bit of feedback on that, Nelda? Okay, whether you're asking for it or not, I'm going to give you a little feedback in terms of struggling on what's this, Samantha? As the great Canadian Geddy Lee of Rush said, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And that is so true. And that's what you need to realize, is there is an opportunity cost whenever we're hovering in indecision, because we're doing nothing on either of two really good things. So let's say that you have, three goals. Nelda, would you have any example by chance on some goals Nelda, let me just say this. If you have several goals you're thinking about and you're willing to share them or comfortable doing that, I would love to put them down there so we could process it a little bit. But otherwise, I'm going to kind of make something up here on the fly and give you a little bit of process for considering how to make that decision. But it'll be, if you have some goals, we can help you out here right now. Let's say, for example, I'll pull some goals out that are some common ones. Like, let's say you're trying to decide whether, okay, I really need to clean out my garage. It's a big project. Well, let's make it bigger. Clean out storage unit. Okay, like I'm helping my mother-in-law some on this a little bit recently. Clean out a storage unit, and I know Gene has had to do this. That's what made me think of it. She did a fantastic job of banging that out. Let's say you clean out a storage unit. You simultaneously, there's a craft project you would love to do. Like, for example, my daughter, I would love to take, I sew, and I would love to take a bunch of of her old t-shirts and make a quilt from all these old t-shirts from high school and college, like a memory quilt. So I'm going to put memory quilt. Okay. That's my craft project. And then let me do one more here from home. Oh, I have a patio that desperately needs to be, I'm going to just put refurbished. Okay, so these are all pretty significant projects or goals, and they all need to get done eventually. Okay, so Nelda has getting blood sugar stable, prep for daughter's birthday, etc. Okay, cool. I'll come back to those. Nelda, if you think of a couple more, put them in there and we'll look at those specifically. We've got 9 minutes. I'll hit on this really quickly. Here's the first thing to realize. You might want to say, how much time, here's some things that I would consider. How much time would each one of these take? So let's, figure out an estimated time. I'm just going to put EST here. And whether you can realistically do that now or not. Okay? A goal may not be realistic. Realize that you're not going to say no to any of these. You're going to say no, not now to 2 of them. And you're just going to decide which one you're going to give priority to at the moment. But I would urge you, if you can, to not bounce around between them, but to pick one and focus on it. Or one of them you might be able to do incremental progress on. Let's say, for example, I'm going to say that for me, the higher priority out of these 3 would be refurbishing the patio and the craft project. This is annoying because it's been sitting there forever and a day, but the world isn't going to end if it doesn't get cleaned out next month. Okay? Let's say I'm going to put that on the low priority end. And these 2 are higher. Summer's coming. I want to be able to spend out time on my patio, and I can't stand the fact that it's all messed up right now. And I want to get to it before it gets blue blazing hot. I live on the Arkansas-Texas border, and I've got a handful of weeks before it'd be so darn hot the ticks won't even move. Okay, so like that timeline. This has a little more priority because of context. Now here's what I would do with these. Not that I'm going to tackle these particular ones, but I'm just hypothetically showing you. This is the sort of thing that I'm probably going to need to do kind of a blitz around. And by a blitz, I mean I'm going to really have to sink myself into it for a bunch of hours to get it done, because there's just too much prep and cleanup to go at it in bits and pieces. But this is the kind of thing where I need to like schedule a weekend. There's keyword. Did you hear that? Schedule a weekend or a couple weekends where I'm going to get it done. Okay, so I decide when and how, and I put some limits to when I'll do that. Now this one I could sit down and do as a weekend project, and I could like nail this out over the next 2 or 3 weekends, and then the next weekend I'm going to do that. But maybe I don't want to wait all that long on this one. So what I can do instead is I was making baby blankets throughout Lent, and every night I sewed for 30 minutes on baby blankets. And it was the kind of thing where in our guest room, I set up a table, I got out my sewing machine, I laid out all my pieces, and I just sewed for a few minutes every night, because I could literally walk into that task, sit down, sew, and walk out anytime I wanted. And I literally set a timer. But sometimes my timer would go off, I would be really enjoying it, and I would, spend some more time on it. and I might spend a whole hour instead of 30 minutes. But I set a timer every evening for 30 minutes. And for 40 days, every night for 40 days, I sewed for 30 minutes. And I finished 4 quilts. I started a 3rd one, and I'm kind of, just working my way along through that one when it feels nice to me. But you see some of the process that goes on there. I think about how much time it's going to take. I think about how important it is to me given other things going on in my life. And then I think about, is this the kind of thing where I'm really going to have to sink myself in and bury myself in it? And that's one reason I've been putting it off. And if it is, then, by golly, I'm just going to have to schedule it and treat it like an appointment. Or is this the kind of thing that would be fun and meaningful for me to have a little bit of time in here and there, and I just need a habit of working on it for a while? So I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, you got some others here. Declutter house, go through summer clothes. I work full-time with daily, weekly tasks. It's hard to make time. Need to break down a little bit. And that's it, Nelda. You need to break it down. I don't know if Jean, let me look if Jean's still on the call. Yeah, Jean's still here, and she can really speak to this because she did just a fantastic job of this recently. But like one of the things that Jean did, and this came out of a discussion in our mastermind group, with a closet that she was trying to clean up, and I hope you don't mind I'm sharing this, Jean. I think we've talked about before in here, but she got in a habit where I think it was she took 3 items out. Every time she went in to get her closet, she would take 3 items out to get rid of until she had gone through everything. And that's breaking it down to a micro-action level. And, when you talk about making time, sometimes a simple routine like that has a profound compound impact is the best way to do it for some of the things where we need to make time. Like decluttering the house. It might be things like, when my office starts to get out of control, I start the day and I end the day with what I call a 10-minute tidy. And I was inspired by, there used to be this show, now I'll date myself and my children. When my kids were little, they watched this show called The Big Comfy Couch with this girl, Luna the Clown, and she had a couch about the width of this room, and the seat was probably this high. And at the end of the show, she would say, "Who made this mess?" And she'd look around the room and say, "I guess I did." Or no, she'd say, "I did." And she'd go, "I guess I'll clean it up." And she would do a 10-second tidy. And I got inspired by that, so I created for my kids what I called 10-minute tidies, where we would just set a timer for 10 minutes. We'd run around and pick up all the stuff that got left on the library table, or shoes that were kicked off in the living room, or a game that was pulled out and never put up, and all that, mail and crud that just sort of clutters up here and there. Well, when my office or my house starts to get a little cluttered and it's bugging me, I will do 10-minute tidies. And I'll do I'm going to do a 10-minute tidy in the morning. I'm going to do one right before I go to bed. And it's amazing, within a week, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, you do that every day for a week. That's 20 minutes a day. I don't know, somebody crunched the math there, 140 minutes? That's, it'd be, 140 minutes. So that's, by the end of the week, you spent over 2 hours cleaning your house. But it doesn't feel like anything when you set a timer of 10 minutes. So there we go. Okay, campground, internet, not so great. Can't do everyone chat. No, I'm working on End of Life book 2. I need another master class to get more tests. Gene, I miss you. We need to get together for a. Let's talk about that. Get a hold of me, or I'll get a hold of you. We need to, if nothing else, get together for a roundtable. Gene was in our last master class, and the biggest and best thing out of that was accountability. And I would love to know who would be interested in just being accountability partners, being a part of an accountability group. I kind of coached that group, and we had a great time together. I made some huge strides myself during that. It was a very special time. Okay, well, I'm seeing it's 12:29. Glad to hear, Gene, that you're back on the road. Yes to roundtable and accountability. I'd love to be in accountability. Yeah, me too, Gene. I will. I'll get a hold of you and other folks if you're interested in that. Let us know. Once again, here's the link to the 5-day challenge that I'm going to be doing. And I hope that you'll take part in it. Right now, the target is May 15th. Cross your fingers. Don't cross your fingers. Tell me to go do the work. I'm showing 12:30. Let's wrap it up. Y'all have a fantastic and productive week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for commenting. And be sure and pick up that monthly progress report. And you know what? Don't wait. Here's what I would do. I would pull one of these out right now and just think about your last month, reflect on your last month for a few minutes, and fill one of these out. I did one in about 20 minutes. It was really invaluable. So see you soon. You all have a great week. Bye now.